Hello and welcome to Toolbox, Webisode 13. We are starting our last module of this series today with Interpersonal Effectiveness, Give Skill. This webinar series is put on by Youth Eastside Services. We are the leading behavioral health support in East King County. We provide youth and family mental health counseling, as well as substance use and co-occurring disorder counseling. And then as well, I am from the community education and prevention programs that we run. You are welcome to reach out to us, though right now we are currently not taking any new clients. You are welcome to go to our website or call us to inquire about services, though. And you are, of course, always welcome to follow us on social media. If you'd like to reach out to someone else and that you have some sort of mental health crisis that doesn't quite reach 911, but maybe you would like to talk to someone immediately, you are always welcome to call the King County Crisis Line or the Crisis Text Line. Those are both resources that are open 24/7. Or for our younger audience that might be listening, TeenLink is a peer-to-peer helpline for teens by teens. So feel free to reach out to that resource as well. My name is Kaylin Griffith. I'm a behavioral health support specialist. I am a licensed mental health counselor associate and substance use disorder professional trainee. The materials that we use to inform this webinar series come from the DBT Skills in Schools textbook, as well as the DBT Skills Training Manual. I am foundationally trained in dialectical behavior therapy, and Youth Eastside Services is a DBT-informed agency. Today's agenda will be having our quick mindfulness, just like usual. I will cover some of the goals of interpersonal effectiveness. We'll talk about the give skill. I'll give you something to try at home, and as well, I will host a Q&A if anyone is here joining me live. And just a quick reminder about our toolbox. Obviously, we have all of our past skills up here on the slide, as we always do, including today starting our interpersonal effectiveness module again with the give skill. But first, we are going to do a little bit of mindfulness. And for this mindfulness practice, I actually have a script that I want folks to participate in. So we're going to focus on the mindfulness participate skill. And for this one, I have a script on the next slide, and I'm actually going to just model saying it out loud. And when you are watching this recording or going through this yourself, I would like you to also say the script out loud to yourself. And while you're doing that, I want you to think about what thoughts are kind of coming into your mind, what ways your brain might be battling with the things that you're saying out loud, if you really like the things that you're saying out loud, how it makes you feel to say those things out loud, and then as well, like what kind of resonates with you after this practice. But go ahead and get into a comfortable position, somewhere where you can view the screen pretty well, and we'll go ahead and get started. So this is a declaration of self-esteem and self-acceptance. In all the world, there is no one exactly like me. Everything that comes out of me is authentically mine because I choose it. I own everything about me, my body, my feelings, my mouth, my voice, all of my actions, whether they be to others or to myself. I own my fantasies, my dreams, my hopes, my fears. I own all of my triumphs and successes, all of my failures and mistakes, because I own all of me. I become intimately acquainted with me. By doing so, I can love me and be friendly with me in all of my parts. I know there are aspects about myself that puzzle me and other aspects I do not know. But as long as I am friendly and loving to myself, I can courageously and hopefully look for solutions to the puzzles and for ways to find out more about me. However I look and sound, whatever I say and do, and whatever I think and feel at a given moment in time is authentically me. If later some parts of how I looked, sounded, thought, and felt turned out to be unfitting, I can discard that which is unfitting and keep the rest and invest something new for that which I discarded. I can see, hear, feel, think, say, and do. I have the tools to survive, to be close to others, to be productive, and to make sense and order out of the world of people and things outside of me. I own me, and therefore I can engineer me. I am me, and I am okay. Just sitting with that for a couple of moments. I think it's really interesting to think about how we very, very rarely turn these kinds of affirmations on ourselves. And I would really encourage you to try speaking this out loud, just because your brain will actually engage a very different part of order and structure and interpretation if you are verbally saying something versus just thinking something. It engages different parts of your brain and actually might make the message stick a little bit different. And it might make your experience of engaging with a script like this different as well. And I'm curious, for those of you who might be sitting at home, maybe having just read the script, maybe having just listened to me read it, and maybe deciding whether or not they want to read it themselves. I think it's really interesting the way that this mirror turning inwards is helpful, because these affirmations are really important. And it is really important to remember that you are the only one in control of yourself. You are the only one who lives with yourself forever. So knowing that you have this control and recognizing where you do have control, where you don't over yourself, can be really helpful. And I think it's especially important that we think about these kinds of affirmations in the wake of our interpersonal effectiveness unit, because we're kind of transitioning a little bit away from skills that focus just on ourselves. And if we're thinking about this entire interpersonal effectiveness unit, the main thing that we want to cover is that we are maintaining our own self-respect, we are getting our needs met in a way that maintains our relationships with other people. So even though these skills might focus on the interactions that we have with others, it's still really important to keep a corner of that mindfulness pointed inwards, because that will still give us really important information about how to engage with others. So really quickly, we are going to cover the interpersonal effectiveness goals. And the way this is covered in the material is the first goal is meeting your objectives. Obviously, if y'all are looking at the slide with me, you know that I did not star this one because we are not actually going to be meeting these goals in order. I looked through the materials and I felt that a different skill would go better first, and just the flow of things, because as we've been going through this, you've noticed, I'm sure, that skills build on skills. So I think the give skill is a much easier place to start. And it makes a lot more sense. It's a much simpler skill to understand. So we're going to focus today on maintaining and improving your relationships. And the last goal of interpersonal effectiveness that we'll cover in this module is really maintaining and increasing your self-respect. So what happens when you engage in relationships? What's the effect on you? So if we're thinking about just goals of relationship effectiveness, again, that goal of maintaining and increasing our relationships, the thing that we really want to focus on is communicating your wants and needs in a way that builds and maintains that relationship, as well as thinking about how you want the other person to feel about you after the interaction is over. And I think oftentimes that is the lesser thing that we really think about. The thing that always kind of comes to mind when I think about relationship effectiveness is The Sims. I don't know about any of you guys watching at home, but I used to play The Sims a lot. I thought it was really cool. I liked designing homes, and I know quite a few people who used to have little farms of Sims that they would kill off in camps and things like that. But The Sims is a great game. And one of the things that it does mirror very, very well is how relationships are built. I don't know about you guys, but when I was younger, I had a character in The Sims that I really, 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 really wanted to marry the cute guy down the street. So I had my sim, I invited the cute guy over, whatever, and I made them talk, and I made them talk over and over and over again, and I made them joke over and over and over again. And when the option for flirting came up, I made them flirt over and over and over again. And for anyone else that might have had the same experience, you might have noticed it doesn't go that simply, right? Just because you talk over and over again and you get these cute little plus plus little people signs above their heads, if you keep doing that over and over and over and over again, it'll stop working. Over time, you'll get little minus signs instead of plus signs, which means the relationship has suffered a decrease instead of an increase. So thinking about how the other person might interpret your skills or the way you're interacting with them and things like that, it's not always cut and dry. It's not always super oh, straightforward, this is exactly what's going to happen if I do this thing. Other people are sometimes hard to predict. And just because we like something and want to keep doing that thing over and over and over again, doesn't mean the other person is exactly the same. So in any kind of relationship, if we are trying to maintain this relationship and grow with this person, we want to really keep in mind how the other person is feeling about us and how we can kind of make them feel a little bit better about the way that they're feeling about us. This way, they can view us as a supportive person at the same time that this person is supportive for us. So, just a quick question to pose to the audience for some reflection. How many positive relationships do you think you would have if you constantly insisted on doing only what you want, talking only about yourself, and not acknowledging the other person's feelings at all? I think the answer is pretty straightforward here, that you probably would not have very many positive relationships. People probably wouldn't so much enjoy spending time with you. They probably wouldn't really want to do it. You might have a few relationships that stick around because it doesn't sound like you're actively doing anything bad to other people. And, other people are not being nurtured in this kind of point of view and way of functioning. So instead, if we want more positive relationships, we have to focus sometimes on the other person. Similarly, how many of you pay attention to the way that you interact with your parents? You don't pay much attention to their relationship with your parents because oftentimes folks don't think that how they interact with their parents has any effect on their relationship. I remember when I was younger, I really thought, hey, my parents will always just be there for me. Sometimes at the end of the day, if I am angry at something and I lash out, it often felt, unfortunately, like my parents were a safer outlet for that than some of my friends because I had this cognition in my brain that, hey, they'll always love me. They will always be there for me. And do you think you would be more likely to get what you want from your parents if you attended to the relationship in a way that strengthens it? If you put just as much value and effort into those relationships as you do with others? Because the reality is, no one has to have a relationship with you. Depending on how you treat another person, even if they are blood related, even if it's by marriage, even if it's by anything, how you treat the other person matters and it will have an effect on the relationship. Similarly, I also want to pull the contrast a little bit. How many of you pay attention to how you interact with your children? Some don't pay much attention to their relationship with their children because they don't think how they interact with their children has any effect on the relationship. Similarly to how some parents feel about their kids and kids feel about their parents, it does matter the way that you invest at that time into that relationship. It does matter the way that your children view you as supportive or validating or helpful or accepting of their feelings and their actions. Do you think you would be more likely to get what you want from your children if you attended to this relationship in a way that strengthens it? You spent time with them, acted interested in the things that they want to engage in, things like that. This really just goes to show you that any relationship can really benefit from these skills. It doesn't matter if this person is locked into your life or not. So, also thinking about, what about teachers, bosses, or close friends? Who are other relationships in our lives that we kind of take for granted and or have in a very structured, kind of compartmentalized part of our life that we don't really think about that relationship? Are there ways that those relationships could improve or get better or become more supportive for us or more helpful for us if we invested in those? Just food for thought. So determining our priorities. There are some situations where your objective within a interpersonal interaction is less important than maintaining your relationship with a person or maintaining your self-respect. So if we're thinking about any kind of impersonal interaction, we want to think about our goal of the interaction. We want to weigh whether or not our relationship with the person is more important than the thing that we want to have happen or the thing we want to say no to. So, for example, you have a movie date with a friend. You want to see the new comedy, something that just came out, has a bunch of your favorite actors in it, and your friend wants to see something else. So, if you are thinking about wanting to go to this movie and the relationship with this person is really, really, really important to you, but you are terrified of horror movies, if your friend really, really, really wants to see a horror movie, this might be a time to use another skill, an option for saying no, something where you're like, hey, no, like that will give me nightmares. It'll impact my sleep for days. I won't be able to be alone in my house anymore. So if that is what's going to happen, you're kind of going to be on the side of no, my goal is kind of more important right now than the relationship. Let's see something else. But if they kind of just want to see a drama and it's not quite the comedy that you really wanted to see, you're not super opposed to it though. In this case, your relationship with the person might be more important than insisting on seeing the comedy. it really depends on the situation, and things are not black and white. So it depends on your own values, your own priorities, the meaning that you're getting out of the relationship, and the things that you're doing, and really what matters most to you. But knowing that if you choose one thing over the other, sometimes you're going to have to put more focus in maintaining one of those, or just noticing what those outcomes are if you intentionally choose one over the other. So give is a mnemonic for skills to use for building and maintaining a relationship. These skills focus on how you should interact with the other person, similarly to the how skills of mindfulness, teaching you how to practice mindfulness. So really quickly, I have a quick video that this is the scene that comes to mind every single time I think of give and these kinds of skills. And I do want to give the quick caveat. This is a clip from the show Friends, which was produced in the 90s. So there are some values about gender that are displayed into this clip that I don't personally support and don't really support current times either. There's a claim that someone is calling the other man a woman, and that's really insulting. Nowadays, I don't find that super insulting. I don't think that would necessarily be the thing that a sitcom would focus on anymore. And I think the rest of the content that goes into the scene really well emphasizes the point of how give interacts with interpersonal effectiveness. So I'm just going to make sure to share my sound. All right.
So what's really neat is if you sear the stems of the flowers first in a frying pan, your arrangement will look fresh much longer.
Joey, that's such a great tip.
Monica, could you excuse us for a second? I need to talk to the girl with the flowers.
Okay. Oh, but Joey, come over later because I'm going to teach you how to make a bird feeder out of just a pine cone and some peanut butter.
Aw, I love birds.
What is the matter with you?
What?
You're arranging flowers! You got dead flowers! You got a picture of a baby dressed like flowers! This is not Joey!
Hey, look, I am still Joey, okay? Flowers, they're just, they're nice to look at. And that happens to be a picture by a famous artist of a famous baby.
You're turning into a woman.
No, I'm not. Why would you say that? That's just mean.
Now I've upset you? What did I say?
Not what you said, it's just the way you said it. Oh my God! I'm a woman!
All right, so clearly the thing that Chandler in this case was trying to communicate is that he no longer really recognizes his friend. His friend is someone who has developed these new hobbies and interests and things like that and explorations that he just does not get in relation to his friend. He's trying to communicate like, hey, I miss you, like what is going on? And of course, the way that he says that and the voice tone that he has, the way he's kind of freaking out about it, of course, that puts Joey on the defense. And he gets mad, he gets offended, he feels like, oh my gosh, why are you saying these mean things to me? And he has like kind of this outburst of it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And I wonder how many folks in the audience have heard this, maybe not in quite the same context, but with someone else, someone in a fight. Maybe you said something that you didn't think was that bad, and the person came back with, it doesn't really matter what you said. I know that thing wasn't insulting, but it's how you said it. You implied something bad. So in this interaction, the little symbols that we have going on are little minus marks because the communication isn't happening effectively. And the way it's being communicated is also kind of offensive, kind of creating distance between these two people. So if we're going back to give, the G in give stands for be gentle. Be courteous, respectful, and pleasant. Don't attack them or threaten them. So no saying like, if you don't do this or you cause this, avoiding judgments as we kind of try to do with all of our skills, and paying attention to your voice tone. Your voice tone matters. It's not what you'd said, it's how you said it. Is your voice tone angry? Is it gentle? Is it something that communicates like, hey, I'm open and want to hear what you say? Or does it communicate that you're pretty closed off and you're just kind of stuck on your own thinking? The image on the slide here is a jar of honey, and you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. That's a very big customer service example, but most customer service agents know that if you have an angry customer, you have to respond with kindness. That's usually just the policy of the workplace. But Oftentimes, if you respond with kindness and gentleness, you'll get a little bit more with that person than you would if you also kind of escalated to their level, also responded angrily and irritated and frustrated, because that will kind of create just a mess of people being angry and kind of building that anger towards each other. Whereas someone being more gentle and taking space, you might be able to hear the other person a little bit better. You might be able to understand what they're saying, and then your response might be just more helpful or effective. Next is I. Act interested. It's really not that hard. Show interest in what the other person is saying because you care about the relationship, even if you aren't interested in the topic. Sometimes, in order to make a person feel heard and interesting and like you care about them, even if they're talking about something that really just does not interest you, acting interested because you know it really matters to them will invest in that relationship. Allowing the person to finish their thoughts without interruption and without changing the topic or changing it towards yourself or something else that you do find interesting, and being patient with that person. Something that we learn in counseling is that if someone is still bringing up the same topics, it means they're not done processing that thing, or there's still things that they have to say about that thing. If you notice that someone isn't letting you change the topic, even if you're not super interested and you're kind of bored, it means they are very interested in what's going on. It really matters to them. And in this case, again, we're thinking about our objectives. Does the relationship with the person matter more than you not wanting to listen to whatever topic they're talking about? Investing that extra 5, 10, 15 minutes in this relationship might give you a lot more benefit from this relationship than kind of cutting them off, even if you aren't super interested in the actual thing at hand. So, my question for you guys is, active listening skills are really, really helpful for showing and demonstrating interest. So some active listening skills include demonstrating concern, establishing trust and building rapport, asking specific questions. So if they're talking about something and you ask a question, they'll be like, oh, cool, and they want to hear more. I'm not totally boring them. And they'll explain more. Or it might help clarify your understanding and it might give you more interest in the topic too. As well, you can use brief verbal affirmations like I see, or uh-huh, or oh, that makes sense, or I get that. Kind of those verbal check-ins just to track the conversation and let them know, hey, I'm attending to what you're saying, even if I don't have like a full sentence to respond with. Have you ever been in a conversation with another person while you were talking and the other person kept checking for text messages or were on their phone for social media updates? We're just not paying attention in general. How did you feel in that experience? How long did it take before you kind of just trailed off and stopped talking? Do you think the other person cared about what you were saying? And what was the nonverbal communication? And what do you notice in a supportive listener in contrast to that? So like if you are talking to someone about something that's really, really important to you, and they're kind of like faced like this, they maybe got their phone up, they're like not really paying attention, and they're kind of just like sometimes responding to you. The orientation of my body shows a lot about the way that I'm engaging with you. Whereas instead, if I'm pulled forward, I'm like really focused on your face. If I'm maintaining eye contact, because that's something in my culture that demonstrates showing listening, maybe that's not for you. But I am doing things that show you that I'm tracking what you're saying. I'm trying to understand it and I'm processing it, and I'm trying to give you feedback about it. Those are very different communications, even nonverbal, than me turning away or walking away or doing something else that is not looking at you. Next, we have validating. Validating is one of my favorite skills. It's something that's super, super, super easy. And I know that a lot of people already use this. And I think it's really intentional to reframe this as a skill. It's something that you should be doing and doing in your relationships to maintain them, because it's a skill that really helps with that. But validation is simply acknowledging the other person's feelings, behaviors, or opinions, and expressing that they make sense. So, well, of course you got mad. I can see how that would lead to you feeling that way. Versus, wow, you kind of blew up out of nowhere. One of those things is really invalidating because it says like, hey, your feelings are totally out of whack with what I would have expected from you, or they don't make sense. Your feelings are out of nowhere. They're weird and wild. Versus, well, yeah, no, of course you would feel that way. Like, given all of these situational things, like I would feel that way too. Like that makes total sense. And I think the key here is that validation does not equal approval or agreement. It does not say, I would feel that exact way too. All it says is based on what's going on for you, that makes sense. It's as simple as that. And the thing that I think is really important to remember here is all feelings are valid. They always are. No matter what you are feeling a certain type of way because certain things are going on in your environment that created that feeling. Your feelings might not fit the facts, but that's very different. Your feelings depend on your perspective, and that is distinct from a factual reality. So if you are validating someone, remember, this is not based on the facts of what happened. This is just based on that person's perspective. And if you're really noticing a disconnect between their perspective and reality, hearing them out and letting them know their emotions are heard first might make it a little bit easier to then help that person kind of check the facts about their emotions and their feelings and their thoughts. So validating first will make the rest of that a lot easier. And it'll make the person feel more like you're actually on their side in this. And even if later you have this conversation about how it doesn't fit the facts, they'll be like, no, but you heard me anyway. And that still really, really matters in relationships. So again, we can validate why someone did something without validating what the person did. So if you're trying to validate someone who like maybe cut class or uses substances to cope or self-harms or something that you really don't like those behaviors, you can still validate like, hey, you're in a lot of pain, or hey, class was really, really hard for you to be in today, without being like, yeah, skipping class was the right thing, or using substances or self-harming was the right thing. That's very different than just validating the emotional experience and how things were feeling really difficult for them. So some strategies for validation. One, you can always frame a validation based on their past experiences. So of course you were scared to tell your parents that you failed the test because last time you did that, they grounded you for a month and that really sucked. So based on this person's past experiences, you can be like, of course these feelings would come up. Like I see exactly how that would happen. The other strategy that you can always use is by normalizing a person's reaction. Being like, I get that you were scared to tell your parents that you failed. I would be too if I failed. So being like, hey, if that situation happened to me or if that situation happened to someone else, that would make total sense. Of course, things would turn out that way. And helping them know they are not super weird or bizarre and their emotions are not totally obscene, but they make a lot of sense and they're very natural. So different levels of validating, also outlined by DBT, include level 1, just staying awake and paying attention. So that is kind of that act interested here. Literally just being awake, facing the other person, and being someone who is accepting what they're saying, technically is level 1 validation. Level 2 starts including reflecting back. So based on what they're saying, you can take the subject, reframe it or rephrase it, and give it back to them. You're demonstrating your understanding because you're reframing what they told you and being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Here's how I would paraphrase that. Is that the same thing? And they could be like, yes or no. And then you can further your understanding of what they're saying. Level 3 gets to reading minds. And you might have remembered, we've talked about this in the past, where reading minds is not a skill that human beings have. We literally cannot do that. And I think what reading minds really is kind of getting to is reading between the lines. If the person is talking about a situation, but they don't exactly name their feelings, you can read their mind and be like, I can imagine that you'd be feeling this way. Or let me guess, this is what they did next. If you seem to know the person or the situation really well, just letting them know that, hey, I'm tracking what you're saying. I understand what's going on based on what you said. And I can assume a little bit of this other information based on past conversations that we had or based on our relationship that we have. Level 4 is showing understanding of their thoughts, their feelings, validating their emotions, and letting them know like, yeah, this is all, I understand it, I get it. I can see how this would happen. Level 5 is acknowledging the valid. So specifically acknowledging the things that you think are valid, including their feelings, maybe their thoughts, their reactions, and maybe really paying attention to not acknowledging or validating the invalid. So those behaviors that maybe you don't agree with, or maybe those behaviors or outcomes that you're like, that didn't really have to happen. So specifically focusing on the things that you want to validate. And then level 6 is showing equality, showing that, yes, that would make sense. If that thing happened to me too, I would feel the same way. You and I are on the same level of feelings. It would impact me just as much. You are not a strange person for having this interaction or having this experience. So really demonstrating like, hey, we are equals in this. And you are not bad for reacting in that way. And finally, looking at our last piece of our give skill, E refers to using an easy manner. So smile, be easygoing, use humor, and use a light tone of voice. This is very similar to the G part, which is be gentle. And this one you can use in other situations too. Like if you are feeling like you have to tell someone something that might not be easy, or if you are really upset about something that happened and you need to bring it up with them, it'd be a lot easier if you kind of approach this person, again, emphasizing your past relationship with them and how close this person is, no matter what kind of conflict might have happened, being like, hey, I know you, I know that we're good friends. This thing really happened and it really upset me. You don't have to approach them like super angry, like eyebrows down and little points, like arms crossed, like really defensive. You can be really open and like come from a caring perspective instead. And approaching it from this different way might really change the way that the person will respond to you. So the graphic that I have up here is a closed posture, or a kind of defensive posture, can indicate hostility, unfriendliness, and anxiety. Whereas an open posture, where your arms are not over your chest, and you're kind of open and accepting things, might indicate friendliness, openness, and willingness. I think something really, really important here is that when we adopt a certain body posture, it's kind of out of our control the way the other person will interpret that. So we cannot guarantee that the other person will look at our body posture and be like, oh, that person looks friendly, or oh, that person looks really hostile. But we can kind of stack the deck in a way where we're at least giving off a presentation or our presence in a way that typically other people would respond more openly to. So just knowing that in general, this will communicate a little bit more openness might give the other person a little bit more ease in approaching you. But that said, it's not necessarily, again, a guarantee that this will work. It's just kind of thinking about all the factors involved and the ones that you do have control over. So the goal is to minimize the chance of the other person feeling as if they are forced into a defensive position so they can be more open to hearing what you're saying. Your posture does matter. So if we are thinking about our at-home practice, something that we always give you, this time we are giving you an in vivo experience, something that we actually want you to try and practice at home, because I think this will really send home the difference between using give skills and not using them. But I want you to find another person to practice with, and with this person, practice taking turns, talking about an event from your day or your week you would feel typically comfortable with talking about a friend. So, taking turns, person A, whoever wants to go first, will begin by sharing about this event. And we want you to pick something that you can talk about for kind of a while. This practice is laid out for about 10 minutes, but use whatever time you need to. And of course, you can converse while this is happening to kind of stretch that out for 10 minutes. But for the first 5 minutes that the person A is sharing, person B should use give skills. So be gentle, act interested, validate, and use an easy manner. For the second 5 minutes, person B should intentionally stop using give. Don't necessarily try and be gentle. Don't necessarily try and act interested. Maybe turn away from the person, get out your phone. Don't necessarily attend to them verbally or anything like that. And just kind of don't use them. Because that will really emphasize the difference between what it feels like to experience them versus what it feels like to be cut off from them. And similarly, vice versa, the person using them will feel what it's like to attend to someone versus not attend to someone, and what it's like for the relationship. Then you're going to switch roles so the other person can experience what you just experienced. And then discuss, what did it feel like to experience give or not? How did it change your perception of the relationship? Did you feel like you got to process the thing that you were talking about? And was that conversation effective? Just some things to think about. There's also on our handout this week, as we always have a handout that goes through the slides too, there's some spaces where you can write down your reflections and how it felt. I currently do not have anyone joining me for this live session, so I'm going to go ahead and skip the Q&A portion. However, I do want to put a quick reminder that we do have 3 more sessions on the books going through the end of July. So if anyone listening to this one has any questions either on this material or any past material, feel free to join us again in the future so you can ask those questions. You are welcome to reach out to us again. We are not currently taking new clients, but you are always welcome to inquire about services. You are always welcome to reach out to someone else as well. So we have those crisis resources up on this slide. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.